Debate between the candidates for Ohio's 15th congressional district. The candidates are, in alphabetical order, Mary Jo Kilroy, Republican Deborah Pryce.
The central front on the war on terror is Iraq. And as mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, sons and daughters, we need to thank the volunteer forces that are fighting the terrorists there so they don't hurt us here.
And we know that Deborah Pryce is wrong on the defining issues of our time. She is wrong on the war. Stay the course is not a strategy, it's a slogan.
And they don't need Iraq as a magnet. All they need is a Danish cartoon or a statement from the Pope. Does anybody remember Solomon Rushdie?
My opponent is in a state of denial about Iraq. She says she has no questions for our president. She thinks Rumsfeld is doing a good job. We need to change the course, not stay the course. This is a time of war, not a time to be giving that kind of a tax cut to the Paris Hiltons of the world.
But if you look at a very neutral barometer, the National Journal, I am squarely in the middle, right in the middle. I think I'm the middle member.
The culture of corruption has been widely exposed lately, and it's been a Republican problem in Washington and in Columbus.
My party doesn't have any corner on corruption. We have a Democrat sitting in Congress still because the Democrats believe in due process who had $90,000 in his freezer. We have Harry Reid's land deal. I hate to do it. My mother's mad at me, but I had no choice. There's just no way that I can survive this election if I let my opponent do nothing but slam me with untruths and continue to do that without fighting back.
And maybe Deborah Pryce should listen to her mother. But, you know, her ads have been negative, grainy pictures, distortions of my record. This is a referendum on the policies of the current administration and the direction this country is headed.
And both Bob Menendez and Tom Kean Jr. are our guests. We're giving them each their own half hour.
Bob Menendez admitted himself on George Stephanopoulos. He said, "We welcome this investigation."
The fact is that I am under no such investigation.
People look at you and say, "You're a Kean, for goodness sake. Aren't you above this?"
I think that this says more about Bob Menendez than it does about anybody else. 37 of Bob Menendez's top allies and friends and contributors are behind bars.
Well, Tom Kean Jr. has a whole host of people in the Republican Party, officials in Monmouth County, people who he served with in the legislature who he said nothing about it, had to step down as Senate presidents, and I could go on and on. This is an attempt by my opponent to deviate and to pursue the politics of smear because he fears the reality of the voters' understanding that he supports the president's war in Iraq.
Given the information, I would have agreed with Colin Powell, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, President Clinton, and Republicans and Democrats alike, majority of each chamber, that given authorization was the right thing to do.
At that
Since
time, but
then,
at this
there have
point,
been horrendous mistakes that have been made.
My view is that the Iraqi Prime Minister, the Iraqi National Security Advisor, have said to Congress months ago, that within a year they would have their own security forces ready to stand up. That's critically important. We need to make sure they understand that they will have to do that. Secondly, and we should assist them as we transition out over the course of the year.
We need to have a new Secretary of Defense. President Bush is going to be serving the remaining years of his administration. We need a new Secretary of Defense.
No, I do not support privatization. This is the fundamental difference between my opponent and I. When the president came to visit here last year in his hometown of Westfield, he sat in the front row supporting the president's privatization of Social Security.
I oppose privatization of Social Security. I think it's the wrong approach.
Republican Peter Roskam, who currently is in the Illinois State Senate, and Democrat Tammy Duckworth, a major in the Illinois Army National Guard.
I am an independent voice for change. I am ready to stand up and fight for the people of this district. I don't plan on going to Washington and becoming just another career politician.
I've demonstrated an ability to work across the aisle, that we need to finish well, because I do believe that Iraq is one of the fronts in the war on terror. No, I've not used that language. What I've said is that we need to finish well, because I do believe that Iraq is one of the fronts in the war on terror.
Oh my goodness, you know, I want to set the record straight here, and I have several quotes here from Mr. Roskam, who has repeatedly said the same three things: stay the course, finish well, and we can't cut and run, and this is not a cut and run district. I've laid out very real plans for what we need to do in Iraq. I'm sorry, you have said repeatedly, Peter, from the very beginning, stay the course, finish well, and we can't cut and run.
Mr. Roskam, are you changing your rhetoric or not?
We've been invited, Carol, to a dozen joint appearances in the 6th Congressional District. I showed up at every one where we were to be on the same stage and debate. My opponent refused all of those. Had she come, she would have heard me consistently throughout this campaign.
It's the same thing with the torture bill. You know, I have deep concerns about that. I've been shot down behind enemy lines. I have friends who right now are serving near the Syrian border. I am concerned about the safety of U.S. troops.
Basically, the signal is, look, if you're able to get over the border and spend a period of time here, you will end up getting the benefit of citizenship.
Well, Chattanooga Mayor Bob Corker, U.S. Congressman Harold Ford Jr.
Our plan is to decentralize Iraq into 3 semi-autonomous regions: Sunni, Shia, Kurd.
But if we can't cause a country to come together in one, I know we can't do it dividing it up in 3.
Your property was raided after 3 visits by the Immigration and Naturalization Service. I know you've criticized my understanding of the law, but my little understanding of the law suggests to me this: if someone works for you and they break the law, you should fire them. Why didn't you fire that subcontractor when you learned that they were breaking the law?
Because I have never, ever in my life employed an illegal immigrant. And my opponent takes liberty with words. That has never happened. Thousands and thousands of people work for subcontractors under me. And when one was found to have 4 illegal immigrants, the INS absolutely applauded us for so quickly getting them off the job.
What did you do to stop Governor Sundquist from trying to impose an income tax on all of the hardworking nurses, waitresses, truck drivers, and even politicians who are trying to make it too, Mr. Corker?
My opponent takes a lot of liberties with facts, I've noticed over the course of the campaign. And the fact is that I was here during the first 18 months of the Sundquist administration. 18 months. 2.5 years later, after his 2nd election, the income tax was brought up. And I'm the only person in this race, that has asked for independent expenditure ads to come down.
If there was an ad that ran like the one that ran here a week and a half ago for over a week, if anyone I knew or may have been associated with had anything to do with it, that ad would have been down an hour after I learned. But there's one simple difference in the America that I want, in the vision I want to fight for, in the vision that he wants and he wants to fight for. I'm not going to be a parrot for anyone in Washington other than you.
And in this race, this is not a referendum. This is not a referendum. This is a choice. A choice between 2 individuals. 2 individuals that could not have led a different life.
The reality of the voters' understanding that he supports the president's war in Iraq.
I mean, I'm not running away from George Bush. I'm not running towards George Bush.
If you're satisfied with the direction that Rob Simmons and George Bush have taken this country,
they've not actually been in sync with the president's agenda.
Chris agrees with President Bush and the Republican leadership.
You sound just like Newt Gingrich. You sound like Speaker Hastert. You sound like George Bush.
This is a referendum on the policies of the current administration.
This is not a referendum. This is a choice. A choice between 2 individuals.